Hi, and welcome to Thursday Comics. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of Witchman, a new superhero comic book which recently had a successful Kickstarter campaign. So here it is, The Mighty Thor, number 144, the one you've been waiting for Asgard, this battleground Earth. We got Thor coming at you, and you're viewing it from the perspective of the two enchanters, one over here, one over here. I prefer the rejected cover, although this one does sort of follow the rules of a cover more than the other one. I just think the rejected one is just a much more unique and singular image. Like I could stare at that all day, where this one feels a little more run-of-the-mill. And last issue, we got to see a really nice pairing of Jack Kirby pencil art and Bill Everett inking. And we'll be getting more Bill Everett inks further down the line. But Vince Colletta's back. I loved the Bill Everett inks, but for my taste, the Vinny inks just really meld with this series. And really, as much as I liked the Bill Everett inks, it just doesn't feel quite as much like Thor without Vince Colletta. Conceived in grandeur and produced in majesty by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, embellished by Vincent Colletta, lettered by Sam Rosen. We have Balder and Sif alongside Thor, and they're inside Dr. Blake's office. There's a lot of great sequences here of gradual progression, almost animation. So we have this one here where there's this floating head of energy that gets closer to the window and then comes through into the room. It's the talisman of one of the enchanters, and Thor throws his hammer at it, and the talisman disperses. And now we're back with two of the three enchanters, the two who've come to Earth, or more specifically Manhattan, and they've created this circle of energy around themselves. Now Thor and his crew come to confront him, but just in time for us to cut back to Asgard. We get, one of these, beautiful Asgard shots of Odin, watching some wrestling matches going on. And then a giant steps in. I feel like this character here, which is another representation of one of the enchanters' talisman, I feel like this would have worked better if he were sort of, colored green or blue or, some other color to sort of, sell that idea that he is a being of energy. Odin tells him to speak. When the giant says nothing, he points his staff at it, and it dissipates, and we see standing behind the talisman is Forsung of the enchanters. He's the enchanter who chose to go to Asgard to confront Odin. And he tells Odin, let's, you're having these little wrestling matches. Let's have a wrestling match of our own. Let's have a little contest, my power versus your power, and the winner gets the Odin sword, which is kept in this, kind of mystic pyramid, a symbolic motif we'll see, throughout Kirby's works. Kind of reminds me of the pyramid that's in the final issue of The Eternals. We cut back to the action on Earth, kind of a reenactment of the cover image, and as Thor rushes towards the enchanters, this circle of protection that they've created pulls a chunk of the street with them, so that now Thor's isolated from his friends and has to fight these guys 2 against 1. He's outnumbered, possibly outgunned, and so, they're fighting. A great fight sequence, really nicely designed characters, and the thing of lifting up a chunk of the earth that becomes a battlefield, a wrestling ring. Just a really nice, fun, inventive comic book idea. And also, there are some really nice pencil photocopies from this issue. And so I took those a little while back because I wanted to see what it would look like if you applied color directly to Jack Kirby's pencils. That it wasn't quite possible with the technology they were using to print these comics back then, but Stan Lee had even mentioned that at one point, that he wished he could, that Jack Kirby's pencils were so beautiful, he wished he could print the comics directly from his pencils. The battle continues. He throws this one guy off of the platform, and now that guy's just kind of levitating in space, because these are enchanters after all. They're magicians. They're not subject to the same physical laws as we mere mortals are. Thor throws his hammer. This guy sort of stops it in midair, superheats it, and sends it flying back at Thor. And anytime somebody is able to lift up Thor's hammer or use it against him in some way, it feels like a real threat, like a real threshold has been crossed, because so much of the comic sets up how, unthinkable it is for anybody but Thor to be in control of his hammer. Great splash page. So the fight continues, and then Thor gets overcome by some kind of smoke. Odin is getting ready to do battle with Forsung. Really great. I love these Asgardian entourages. And we've seen Odin fight this way a few times at this point. He fought this way with the Absorbing Man. We're both going to hold on to my scepter of power, the sort of symbolic embodiment of Odin's power, of everything Odin's got going for him. They're both going to hold on. And then it's like whoever lets go first loses. And so all kinds of destruction and flame erupts. And now they're hurtling at high speeds through the universe. They smash through a planet and in the process create a new sun. I really like that moment. And I borrowed it for Satan's Soldier. And so everybody's sort of watching this cosmic light show go on. And now we cut back to Balder and Sif on the ground, sort of left there ever since Thor went up for his battle. We get a ratcheting up of this romantic subplot of Balder having feelings for Sif and feeling tremendous guilt over it. Fear not, my lady, right must ever prevail. Her slender arms about me, they awaken a feeling I dare not possess. For she is the beloved of him who is more than brother to me. Again, this sort of, Lancelot motif, the Marvel love triangle. And now the enchanter's powers begin to fail, and this floating island lowers itself right back into place. Balder doesn't waste any time. He jumps right in to join the fight. Just really great fight choreography here. Thor and his friends have defeated these two enchanters, but there's still one enchanter left, Forsung, who's fighting Odin, and that's got sort of the highest stakes of all. We're not going to find out what happens until next issue. And just keep in mind that during this battle between Odin and Forsung, everybody's powers have been taken away. All of Forsung, all of the enchanter's powers and all of Odin's powers are focused into that scepter. So nobody has any powers. In truth, we cannot return to Asgard till our powers be returned to us. And should Forsung be triumphant, we have lost them forever. Forsung triumphant? My brain cannot conceive so shattering a thought, and yet my father now is aged and past his prime. I must return to Asgard. I must learn the awesome answer. And it's interesting, this talk about Odin being aged and past his prime. It does sort of hint towards a time when Odin will not be the sort of, God above all, the sort of mighty sky god, and that sort of change of status quo could be very interesting to the Thor story. And we see what Walt Simonson did with, following that through. Another thing that could possibly segue from Thor into the new gods. These words of concern that Thor is voicing are going to come back to haunt him in the next issue. Next, Abandoned on Earth. And now we have the beginning of the end, the penultimate Tales of Asgard story. Next issue is the Tales of Asgard finale, and look how beautiful this is. These demon riders on demon horses fighting Thor and his friends. The battle's just raging. Again, Kirby's cosmic comic book combat has just grown into completely its own thing by this point. And now we see Alibar has joined the fight, and he's no longer in that fancy magical armor that he was in previously, that Mogul had given him. As Mogul giveth, Mogul taketh away. And so now he's back in the torn rags that he was wearing when we first met him. And he's joined, he knows that Mogul has been just screwing him over, and so he's joined Thor and his friends in the fight against these demons that he had been leading. They've got a moment's respite, but the Demon Riders are rallying for the next attack. But Hogun says, though their attack doth last till hallowed Asgard is naught but faded memory, still shall we stand, still shall we fight, and still shall we prevail. The very soul of Hogun can never be at peace till Mogul hath been crushed.
So say we all.
Here comes Mogul continuing his flight on his mystic flying skycraft, which could be mistaken for a flying carpet and will be mistaken for that. He's got his doomsday toxin in this little skull-shaped jar, and he's ready to, dump it on everybody, basically. The Demon Riders are making their big charge. They come, so fight we now for Asgard.
For Asgard!
And from 40 fearsome throats, the answering cry rings out,
For Satan!
And then a mysterious beam strikes the 40 riders, and they are, disintegrated. They've been Omega affected. And we see the guy responsible. It's Volstagg with that wizard's rod that he found in the previous issue. We can talk about this a little bit more in the next issue, but an anticlimactic way to end this epic battle. I would have rather seen them, sort of fight it out and win through, strength and wit and perseverance in an epic battle. But this is a comic book, and what's more, it's a short backup feature in a comic book where brevity is the soul of wit, where you have to be as concise as possible. And this kind of gives it a humorous ending, having the least among us, the sort of fool among them being the one who saves the day. Again, I mentioned it in the previous issue, but a lot like Jar Jar Binks saving the day at the end of The Phantom Menace. It's a story beat I don't find particularly satisfying or enjoyable as a fan of the genre, but I understand it. I understand where Kirby's coming from with it, and that we are a modern people. We are not the Vikings. We are modern, at this point, 20th century Americans, and we don't identify with stories where might makes right and strength triumphs overall. We do kind of identify more with lucky, stupid oafs who blunder into victory in this example. Or we also identify with stories where somebody through smarts rather than muscle figures a way through things. And maybe that's what's happening here too. But that we don't lionize strength of arms, but we do lionize humor, kindness, inventiveness. And so that's the key to victory, not beating someone into submission. It seems like it's the end, but they still have to deal with Mogul in the next issue. So still plenty to chew on, and we'll have a couple more discussions about what makes for a satisfying ending to an action epic in the next episode. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of Witchman, a new superhero comic book which recently had a successful Kickstarter campaign. I'll see you next Thursday.